on top, right?
Yeah, just it says turn off video. Where it should come near the top.
It says agenda. Wait a minute. Nope, this one doesn't.
Is the mayor logging on there, Allison?
I haven't seen him yet.
Electronic agenda print version. What am I on?
David, can you possibly pop over and help Judith?
I don't know if there's help, but you can see if you can fix it.
Dan, we keep losing your picture.
I think he's got the same issues.
There you go. You're back. Don't touch anything.
Okay, I got it.
It's 1 o'clock. Should I wait
Go
a
ahead
minute?
and start.
No.
It's 1 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'll ask, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. We have no delegations. Consent agenda. Would anyone like anything pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, the mayor would. Wherever he is.
Speak to it.
Oh, here it comes. Give me 1 second here.
Every time I hit split screen, it goes to video. No.
There he is.
Hello again. Sorry.
So, hi, Member Burkett. We're just in the consent agenda. And did you want anything pulled from the consent agenda?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, you do.
I do. Oh, I want the Lions Club. Sorry, I'm a member of a Lions Club in Washago. Yes.
You can't do it either. We have to declare a pecuniary interest.
Yes, sorry.
So do we go back and go back to section B then, Allison?
It depends on what they want to do with it. So if it's just part of consent, they don't need to declare, but if they're pulling it, then they do.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If we don't pull it, do they get what they're asking for?
No.
Well, in that case, I'll pull the consent agenda, D 2.1. But then Allison's going to get me heck for doing that, but we'll do it. Okay, so we'll go to adoption of regular minutes agenda.
Okay, so the motion then reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items, with the exception of item D 2.1.
Do we have a mover on that motion, please? Moved by member McIntyre, second by member Brennan. All in favor? And that is carried.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, we'll go to reports from officials. F 1.1, Westshore main pump. And I see Tony Duran online here. Would you like to speak to the report, Tony?
He's coming. There he is.
Hi there. Hi, Tony. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So we had a report in for replacing the 2 sewage pumps at the main pump station in Westshore. We had put in capital last year to replace the 2 pumps with the 2 pumps that were designed for the pump station, assuming that they would meet the criteria of the engineering design of the wastewater treatment plant of 44 liters per second. We did have professionals come in. We purchased the pumps in the 2022 capital, or 2021, they're purchased. We put one in the ground just as a trial to make sure we could produce the 44 liters a second, which were somewhat guaranteed to us. Through the experiment, it did not produce the 44 liters per second. So we have purchased the pumps for just over $50,000 through engineering, and Flight Pump Company came down, and we determined that we need to go to a 20 horsepower pump in order to produce 44 liters per second. It was sort of a surprise to Trojan and us because we matched up the pump with the proper impeller that should have produced the 44. So in turn, our supplier has agreed to credit us the 55,000, just under 55,000 for the pumps, and to pay the difference on upgrading to the 20 horsepower. It is essential that we have pumps that produce 44 liters per second due to the growth in Westshore. So to accommodate the Minoki Beach, the development behind Tim Hortons, and the LIVE project on Turnbull, these pumps will have to produce what the engineers designed them to produce. Somewhere over time, the pumps that are in the ground did not have the proper impeller on them. So I'm not sure how that happened over time, but right now we only produce 22 liters per second at the plant, and it is insufficient for the growth in that area. So through the confusion with the flight and our supplier and what they were told would be produced from these pumps that aren't, they are willing to credit us the full amount for these two pumps, as long as we can add the difference in for the 20 horsepower pump, which I think, I forget the exact amount because I don't have the report in front of me, but it's an extra 20,000 or 20 some odd $1,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone on the committee have any questions with the report? We have Wanda, Member Minnings, and then Member McIntyre. And you're on mute, Wanda.
Right. Thank you. So through the chair, Tony, when you talk about it's insufficient for Westshore for growth, is it sufficient for the current state of Westshore? And when you talk about growth, is it the new subdivisions that it's sort of a preventative thing for the two subdivisions on Turnbull and Minoki? That's my first question. Then I have one other.
Okay, through the chair. When the development started in Westshore, the engineers had took our permits and said that the plant can handle 44 liters per second, which is fair because that's what it says. Over time, the wrong pumps have been installed in that pump station. Westshore can handle what's in Westshore right now at the 21 liters, 22 liters per second. I think with both pumps on, we pump about 27 liters per second, but it's still not the original design. So we agreed with the director, Derek, that we should at least have what's designed for that plant operating in the main pump station. So the goal was to get to the 44 liters per second. Will we use 44 liters per second right now? No, it's not required, but it will be required over time with development that we will require the full 44 liters per second.
Thank you. And then the second part of my question through the chair is, where does the money from this fund come from, or where did it come from, depending on how the fund's arranged? I'm not familiar with it. And the second part is, what is the balance in the reserve fund currently?
Okay, I see Andrew's got his hand up. He might be the best one to answer that.
Yeah, so through the chair to Member Minnings, the original funds for this came via a government grant that came in after the debenture was issued for Westshore Water and Sewer. So after the project had been paid for, and council at the time took those monies and put it into a reserve to only be used for upgrades to the Westshore water and wastewater sewer facilities, not to any of the other water and wastewater systems. The original amount, I want to say, was probably 1.5 million or in that range. And that was about 2006, 2007. The balance now, it's actually down to about 150,000.
Okay, thank you. You had a follow-up question,
No,
Member Minnings?
those were the two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member McIntyre, and then Member Cox.
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair to Tony. Was the impeller not compatible, or could it have been if at a much reduced price?
Through the chair, sorry, can you repeat the last part of that?
I wondered if about the impeller. There was some discussion with you and others about replacing the impeller. And was that not suitable to bring it up to the 44 liters if you did replace it?
Yeah, through the chair, we did not. When we looked up the design, we pulled the pumps out of the ground and found out that the impeller required by permit was a 454, I believe. We did not have a 454 in there. So we were going to actually try and replace just the impellers, which we could not do because they don't fit inside the current pumps we have. So we had to replace the entire pump. That being said, the 454 in design should pump 44 liters per second. That's what the engineering design says it will do. We have one in the ground right now, a 15 horse with a 454, and it does not do that. It pumps 31 liters per second. So somewhere over time, the engineering and flight themselves have made a mistake and so forth. That's why they're willing to, compensate us for this right now.
Okay, and supplementary through the chair, maybe this is a question for Andrew. I'm just wondering what the difference is between the initial $55,000 increase to make it up to 44 liters per second. What's that difference, and are we paying, or is it out of that $150,000 grant?
Gotta unmute myself first, if I can, through the chair to Member McIntyre. I believe the report suggested the shortfall. I just have to pull it up on my screen here, unless somebody else does it quickly at hand.
31,000.
So
31,400.
So the 31,000 would be coming from that reserve, and it would suggest that by the end of 2022, it would be down to about 120,000.
Further through the chair, and to Andrew, is that 31,000 out of the grant we received?
Well, it's out of it's not necessarily a grant anymore. It's been a reserve for about 15 years.
Oh.
So, and it is coming out of the reserve, because that is where the initial capital outlay was coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Member Cox, I think you had your hand up there.
Through the chair to Andrew. Andrew, can you explain to the new councillors that even if that fund has nothing in it, that it still will come out of the main, you know what I mean, the water and sewers reserve budget?
Certainly. So I know we have been utilizing that particular reserve for ultimately since about 2007 to pay for Westshore specific projects. But as Member Cox pointed out, there is a water and sewer surplus that if there was no money in this particular account, we would draw from that surplus to pay for the capital outlays, but we do that for all the other water and sewer systems as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by the committee? If not, I think if Allison could read a motion, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Motion reads the Public Works Report number W22-032 dated October 18th, 2022. With respect to Westshore Main Pump Station pump upgrade be received, and that staff proceed with the replacement of two new pumps at Westshore Main Pump Station, and further that the capital cost exceedance of $31,408 be funded from Westshore Upgrade and Maintenance Reserve.
Okay, we have a mover on that. Moved by Member Brennan, second by Member Cox. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Tony. Then we'll go to F2, updates of various committees, and I'll ask the clerk if she'd like to add any more details to the report.
I think it's fairly self-explanatory. The biggest part of this is that we've done just a general review, which we'd committed to over a year ago to doing, just to make sure that all of our terms of references are sort of up to current standard and fatten them out where needed to be, and consolidated some of the multiple phrases that said the same thing for committees such as culture and recreation. So we took 3 phrases and made them one, but substantively no real changes to any of the other committees. As previously done by motion of council, all of our advisory committees going forward will meet electronically through Zoom only. Beyond that, the biggest change is what's being proposed to villages and hamlets. And this I leave completely up to council as to how you, or committee, as to how you want to deal with it. So staff are proposing that if the committee remain, that a couple things happen to it. One, that there be some public membership to the committee. It's highly unusual that there is a council committee of only council members. And there should be some public representative or representation on that committee. In addition, we're actually looking to broaden the scope of the committee. So right now, as you note in the staff report on page 2, it says the mandate of the current committee is improvements to local settlement areas and matters referred from council for further consideration. So it's pretty limited. Staff, as detailed on page 2, are looking to broaden that. One thing I do want to make sure that is clear is that even though it's titled Community Revitalization or Revitalization Beautification Advisory Committee, this is not intended to be an economic development committee. This is intended to be where you could work with local groups to do like beautification projects, improve your downtowns, that type of stuff. But this is not economic development for a couple different reasons, but there's a clear difference between the two. And at that point, I think that's about it. So once if council chooses to approve this today, an updated council procedural bylaw, just with the updated terms, references and stuff, will come to council next week. And after today's meeting, depending on how things go, the recruitment will get posted today for the 3 advisory committees we have, along with a couple others. That recruitment will stay open until mid-January, at which point that will come to January corporate services for council's review. So with that,
we've got, I'll ask member Minnings and then member Burkett and then member Cox. Go ahead, Wanda.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair for Allison, you say it's extremely unusual to have a committee that consists mainly of members of council. Can you just explain how that's different than this committee and a few of the others that are in place that actually do have only council?
Sure. So historically, Villages and Hamlets Committee is made up of 3 council members, whereas something like Culture and Recreation has, I think it's 5 public members and 2 council appointees to it. Accessibility Advisory has 1 member of council, 1 member of the public. Going forward in the future, the joint committee will have 2 members of the public, 1 member from each council. So it is unusual. It's over my 4 municipalities, it's highly unusual that you have a council committee that's just council. Sometimes you'll get a little subcommittee of a prime one that's working on one particular little hot button topic. So, but the general main primary committee, it always tends to have a bit of a mix. And part of that is it gives you a connection to the communities you're working with, right? So, so if you have your large settlement areas and your other settlement areas, your rural ones through the municipality, it gives you where you could tie into those people and have 1 or 2 on your committee as well, right? So that tends to be the idea why you have that mix on each committee. So for Culture and Rec, it gives you a tie into local community groups and such, right? So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And supplementary, it's just that I think it was proposed, I don't have it in front of me, the number of meetings you were proposing per year, what is fewer than the Culture and Rec Committee. So I'm just wondering how impactful having a committee that meets 3 or 4 times a year would be to actually move forward enhancements and beautifications. And then my other question revolves around the terms of reference, bullets 1 and 3. that both have the word downtown in them. Whereas if I had to look up the meaning of what a hamlet was, so I don't know if that's the intent, but many of the communities, etc., don't have downtowns. And I'm just worried about having that word in the terms of reference could exclude them from what a hamlet is.
Okay, if I can, Mr. Chair, just by follow-up, and just kind of going back to your last question. So we do, and this goes to the staff report in its original bit. So culture and recreation, this proposed committee, accessibility advisory committee, are different in their very makeup to the meeting we're in now. So you have differences between standing committees of council and advisory committees to council. And for the Township of Severn, our standing committees, which is planning and the one we're in now, are made up of council. They're constituted differently. They're a totally different beast. I hope that goes to kind of help between the differences there. As to the number of meetings, this is a draft terms of reference. So if committee would like to see that be 6 so that it's consistent with culture and recreation, then we could do that. Yeah, it's a draft.
Okay, so I think if you're done, I'll move on to Member Burkett. Thanks. Go ahead, Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair. So I'll just elaborate, not to step on your toes, Madam Clerk, but the Villages and Hamlets Committee was created in, I don't know, 2010 or 2011, I think. The only difference between this committee and the other committees is this committee has a budget. It has a budget of $50,000. This is the difference. And this is where I struggle with what Madam Clerk has written for us, is that she would like public input. Well, I struggle with that because we sitting here were elected by the public to make those decisions, not to step on their toes, but each one of us in our prospective wards could bring something forward so that we could place it in our wards. Because originally this was set up for Port Severn, Coldwater, and Washego, and we neglected the other wards. So what I'm suggesting, and I hope we can have a wholesome discussion about this, $20,000 has been allotted now onto the levy so that it becomes working capital, that staff now will plant flowers and whatever else needs to be done, whether it's Port Severn, Severn Falls, Washego, or Coldwater. The remaining $30,000 that we as a council, and I'm hoping that we can come up with some sort of plan and maybe some terms of reference where that $30,000 maybe in a form of a grant, but would have to be slotted only the same way it was at school. If Ward 5 needed something, or Ward 2 needed something, or Ward 1 needed something, we could come back to council at any point in the year rather than have meetings the way they've portrayed meetings. And we then could make a decision based on what we're hearing from our residents as to what they would like to see in their prospective communities.
Okay, Member Cox.
Yeah, through the chair, just to add to that, there was no budget put in this, so I'm assuming it's $30,000. The terms of reference and the word revitalization, I'm not for having this committee at all. I prefer to have the money put into a pot of some type. I don't know if we call it special projects, and it's $30,000. Each councillor, which is their job, and the mayor and I, we're out in our communities and we can meet with them and we can talk to people and people will bring forward their ideas. We have to make sure that we indicate that is not for, and this is just an example, it's not for an association to put something on a private piece of property. It has to be Township. And the other one is if we get $30,000 one year and people come in early in the year and want to spend 15 of it, I think we'd have to really look at that to make sure there was some left at the end of the year for any other projects. So I think it should be a standing committee of council where we meet, maybe it's just at budget, or it comes into our agenda, our corporate services agenda, with a request, and we look at it and we make a decision if that's something we want. And if we don't spend all the 30,000, so let's say in 2022 we spend 15,000, that 15,000 would go forward into the next year to make it 45,000, because we don't know that maybe there's a year that we want to do a mural or we want to do something that costs more. So instead of putting it on the levy, it would be already put away and we could bring it forward as we need it. And I think I've covered it all, because every single councillor here will have a connection to the community. They will hear on the street, they will meet people. And my concern about revitalization, and I want to also comment on what Member Minning said, is this isn't just for downtowns, because Ward 3 doesn't even have a downtown, and neither does Ward 4. Ward 3 may have something that they'd like to have in their, and I can't say park because that's probably under culture recreation, but they may want to, let's say, plant a big tree, or plant a tree, or have a ceremony for a tree and decorate it. I mean, there's so many different things that come forward besides flowers and things. And I mean, I think someone puts flowers on the Marchmount Bridge. That might be something that we could look after. And the same with Westshore. They don't have a downtown. And when I hear revitalization, the first thing I think of is economic development. And that is not something we want to get into because we already know that we do not have staff for it. So I really believe that if we had the 30,000 in a special projects tucked away so it doesn't get lost. I know, Andrew, I'm sorry. But anyway, that's how I feel about it. I think it's like it would be like a council making the decisions.
Okay, sorry, Andrew, if you want to speak, please, and then Member Brennan.
Sure, if I can, through the chair, to just respond to Member Cox's comments. It is in the council budget for 2022, instead of having a separate villages and hamlets budget, and it was for 30,000. So we could certainly leave it in the current council's budget of 30,000. You can certainly spend it as you like, and at the end of the year, if the 30,000 isn't spent, I can set up a reserve account that transfers that portion of the surplus directly to that reserve each year. So that can be done, and we do it with a couple of other reserves now. So it's certainly doable. It would just be up to council to determine where they want those funds expended during the year.
And Chair, just supplemental, we will have to come up with some type of terms of reference on what we would or wouldn't, like different things we look at.
I'll let Allison speak, and then Member Brennan.
So two things. Just want to remind council that we do have an existing grants policy. So if council would like this to become a standing $30,000 item, what I would suggest is that maybe staff come back to council with an amendment to that policy that kind of provides some guidance as to, or at least a little bit of a framework.
Yep.
And then council can go from there. And then, so today's motion, if council goes down, follows this train of thought, would be that the current committee would be dissolved and that the associated budget be set aside for special projects, is what I'm going to call it, that are to be brought forward directly to council on a case-by-case basis, and that staff report back on an amendment to the grants policy, which will give you a little more time to kind of figure out how that works. I don't think for a one-off project here and there that you need a full standing other committee. I think committee can definitely deal with that either at budget or as they come in on a case-by-case basis would be my suggestion. If that's the way council wants to go. So with that, I leave it with you.
Okay, Member Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Chair Mark. I like the broader concept that Allison's proposal brings forward. Like, for instance, I do have Marchmount and Artray. Be nice to give them a more inclusive feeling for sure. My understanding is we already pay for the flowers at the mill site. It's just that someone volunteers to take care of them all summer, but maybe I'm wrong. My understanding, that's how it was done. In any event, what I don't understand is why a committee involves councillors and outside residents would be a problem. Like, if they had recommendations, wouldn't they simply just make those recommendations? They would go to council and then council would approve or not approve them. I'm not sure what the problem is with that. So if someone can explain to me, I would appreciate that.
Okay, I'll let Member Cox, and then Andrew, did you have a comment? You had your. We'll let Andrew speak first, Judith, and
I'll
That's fine.
just unmute myself. I can, through the chair. I heard the clerk mention make it part of the terms of reference for the grants policy, but I think if we're wanting these to be on township property, we wouldn't really classify them as grants necessarily. So we would probably be better off keeping it separate from the grants, because the associations can use that money as they wish. But I think Councillor Cox is waving, but I think she mentioned she didn't want associations using this for their purposes, but for our purposes.
okay, I think our CAO has a comment.
Thank you. I was just going to clarify for Councillor Cox, but she may want to clarify for herself. I don't think that's what she meant, Andrew. I think she just didn't want them to use them for private events. So associations could apply for it if we put it in under the grant policy with some different caveats. Association could still apply if it was open to everybody. I think she was just restricting. Yeah, she's nodding. I understood what you meant, Councillor Cox.
Thank you.
Fair enough. I just didn't want to get the two of them mixed up. So.
Yeah, I'll speak just for a minute here. I have been on the Delegations and Hamlets from the beginning, and I must admit that it wasn't right leaving out wards 3 and 4. So I like Allison's report saying expand it to the community. I still think you need better focus than just all of council. I think a committee that can focus on things and then bring it forward and towards a budget would make more sense. That's just where I'm coming from. I think we've come a long way in Village and Hamlets, and the evidence is out there. And I think we should expand into wards 3 and 4. And we did that somewhat with the community signs that went up that were outside it came up, say, well, what about our community? So that one, wards 3 and 4 got community signs up there, banners and stuff. So I still like the idea of having the committee. I love the idea of changing the name to communities versus Village and Hamlets, and that's just where I'm coming from. And I'll let Member Cox speak, and then maybe Member McIntyre would like to speak.
Through the chair, to Member Brennan, my worry was that they were going to have 3 members of public. There's 5 wards. Then they were going to have 4 members of public, but there's still 5 wards. And if you get someone from an area in a ward that doesn't know about the other areas of the ward, or may want something for their area of the ward, you see, in my mind, counselors, that's their job. That's what you do. You go out and you see the people and you talk to them. You pick one person that lives on Carleon in Ward 3 or Ward 2, because if they're both there, they don't have the big picture. They don't know a lot of the other, and they wouldn't know where to go. And I just worry that people would be on it thinking of their own area or what they want for their downtown or something. So I just think that counselors and ward counselors seem to have a better overview of what is going on and what is there. And I mean, it's not like we're not letting the public. I mean, this is a big difference. We are now going to them and asking them. That's not what Village and Hamlets did. We are going out to the public and saying, what is it? Or if you see them somewhere and they talk to you about it, or you go to a Lions Club, or you go to something in Marchmount, the Marchmount Ratepayers Association spaghetti dinner, and you hear things. That's our job. That's how we communicate out there to find out what the public wants. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. I'll let Member McIntyre speak, and then Member Minnings.
Thank you, Chair. Further to what you were saying, I was on the committee for a couple of years as well, made up of 3 council members. My thought on it would be somewhat similar to the chairs, that we could add, I don't like to see the committee go bye-bye. We could add citizen members. For instance, if we didn't have someone in 3 or 4, we could add citizen members, volunteers. We don't necessarily need to make the committee up of 3 councillors, but make perhaps 2. I don't want to change, reinvent the wheel, but I like the committee. we went from a $50,000 budget down to $30,000 when the $20,000 was allocated to the township to do certain things. $30,000 is, we could spend it easily over the course of 5 wards, but I agree that we need representation from every ward, whether it's through a council member or whether it's the volunteers. And I'd like to see the chair, I'd like to see the committee remain, not be abolished just off the back of our hand. I think the committee did good work, and I think if we modified it, it would do better. Any further thoughts from anybody? I'd be appreciating listening.
Okay, thank you. I think Member Minnings can speak, and then Member Burkett.
Thank you. And I would agree with Member Burkett and Member Cox, actually, in it being a responsibility of council, and being new to council and just coming off a door-to-door campaign and hearing about what people across Ward 4 are looking for, especially in comparison to other communities in the township where we haven't had them. And yes, I acknowledge that there are some lampposts with signs posted to them. But my concern is that perhaps even as a 1 year with members of council, because I agree we are the closest to the community and it is our job to have the entire township. But I would just say, as far as Ward 4 goes, that it is my strong opinion that we haven't been we haven't had advocacy, and we haven't been represented in any kinds of enhancements or beautifications unless they're citizen driven. So knowing there was a budget, that was new information that I just heard too. I would really like to have that role and that opportunity to do that and not give it to citizen representatives for this year. But I would be open to revisiting it.
Okay, thank you. Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair, and thank you, Member Minnings. Member McIntyre, I don't want to dissolve the committee. I think it's done great work. My struggle is if we're only going to have 3 people at large, that's only representing 3 of the wards. So we're going to need 5 people and then members of council. So if we're going to do that, to Member Minnings' comments, wouldn't it be better if we just had us as council, when we had suggestions from our residents, we could bring it forward. We still have the 30,000 there, and it would still be a decision of council rather than muddy up the whole process in the committee where we have 5 at large. And I'm not sure how many members of council would sit on this committee, and would we ever get consensus as to which project we'd like to do? And then we'd have some that would be upset. I don't know how it would work. I think it would be better to Member Minnings' suggestion as a newbie that we try it for a year and see how well it works, as all of us making that decision with whatever we bring forward from our prospective wards, because we are out in the community. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm going to let the CAO speak, and then Member Cox.
Thank you. From the staff administration side, it would be much simpler for us if we managed it through the grant process. We would have to definitely update the grant criteria to allow the kinds of things that you're asking for. Supporting a committee for $30,000 takes a lot of resources. So we're spending millions other places, but the committee takes the director, the manager, and a minute taker for $30,000. That is a lot of staff resources for a small amount. So you may, to achieve what the mayor and Councillor Minnings is talking about, you may be better off administratively to put it through the grant process, and then all of council would decide. For the new members of council, we have a grant process where we give organizations small amounts of money to do certain things, and we've got some criteria with it. That comes to council. Organizations propose what they would like grants for, and then that comes to council annually during the budget process, and council makes the decision. So it's all of council. That's how they get involved. So we could do something very similar with this process, I would suggest, if that's the wishes of council.
Okay, Member Cox.
Yes, through the chair. I was just going to say what the CEO said. Like for the Public Works Administrator, he's busy enough to have to deal with a committee. And once again, I have to agree with the fact that you're going to have all members of public who will not be understandable if someone says, well, this they're getting it and they're not. And I just don't think they have the big picture. And I really believe that that's what we need to have here is the big picture on what different wards need what. I mean, I would be one of the people who came forward and there was $10,000 left and nobody really said, and somebody said this and somebody else hadn't got anything in the year. I think we as a committee would be more susceptible to say, you know what, go ahead and have it this year and then we'll look at this next year. It's much like a grant at that you give out to different groups like hospitals, and each one has a project and one says, sure, you take it this year, I do. I just believe that it needs to be more equitable because I didn't feel that it was with just 3 people on it. Thank you.
Member Brennan and Member Burkett.
Yeah, this is a most interesting conversation. Again, I think the idea of the broader mandate is important, but I really like CAO's proposal from an administrative efficiency point of view. It makes perfect sense to me. A small committee that involves only 1 or 2 councilors is bound to be biased towards their council wards. Whereas if you go through a grant process, everybody's involved in the decision. It would seem to me a fairly logical way to deal with dispensing the 30 or 50 or whatever amounts of money is allocated to our communities. That's just a thought, but I think that's worth examining further. I think that's a great way to do it.
Member Burkett, I think you had your sign up there.
Thank you, through the chair. And I'm happy to do it this way. I just, I'm not sure how we would set it up if council's willing to do it so that the money doesn't get lost, that the 30,000 is slotted in an area where it is only for the needs of our prospective wards, right? And what our people are looking for, our residents.
Okay, I see the clerk's got her sign up.
So I think if this is the general direction council's going, then staff will come back to council with a proposed framework for what we think council's going to, and council can tweak it, fix it, rewrite it, depending on how we do. And we'd bring that back in a reasonably good amount of time. And then I don't think Andrew or our Director of Finance will have any issue ensuring that $30,000 remains as a standalone item within the council budget for council to allocate, depending on what that criteria is as they see fit and approve. So, yeah, so if it would mean the dissolution of the Villages and Hamlets Committee, because we're going to shift that responsibility to council as a whole to be on a case-by-case basis, and we wouldn't have the committees proposed. Staff are happy to work with whatever way council wants to go. So that does seem to be the general direction the council's going. And please remember that your procedural bylaw and your committee terms of references are not fixed static things. They can be updated at any time. So if 2 years from now, council decides that they want to revamp it and look at it again and recreate some form of a committee, council can do that. It's just putting a motion on the floor and having the support of council, and then staff will bring forward another report as to what that could look like in the future. So it could be to something that Member Minnings was hinting at, something that could be reviewed 2 years from now or 3 years from now or any time during the term, depending on what council or committee wants to do. So for today, this would mean that we don't recruit, obviously, for this committee. And then we would come forward in the new year with an amendment to the grant policy with that framework for council.
Okay, so what do you propose for a motion, Allison?
Sure. So I'll read the motion, and then council can agree or not. And so the motion read that administrative report number A22-033 dated December 14th, 2022 regarding updates to various committee terms of references be received, and that the updated terms of references attached to report A22-033 be approved with the exception that the current Villages and Hamlets Committee be dissolved and that the associated budget be set aside for special projects, that are to be brought forward directly to council on a case-by-case basis, and that staff report back with an amendment to the grants policy. And further, that a bylaw be brought forward with the required amendments to the council procedural bylaw. And further, that a bylaw be brought forward to repeal bylaw 2010-43 regulating the committee of adjustment. And further, that staff proceed with advertising for members for the various committees.
Okay, Member McIntyre would like to speak.
It's a very long motion. My thought would be I'd like to vote just on the Villages and Hamlets Committee separately, if it's possible. And if it is possible, like a recorded vote.
Okay, give me a second.
Sorry, Allison, but.
Yep. While Allison's getting ready, Member Cox would like to speak.
Yeah, through the chair. If you're going to separate it, I'm not sure what it does. It just says yes or no, we're not going to have it, and then we're still going to have a special project. Separating it isn't going to make any difference. No offense. In my mind, I don't understand the separation part.
Member McIntyre.
Through the chair to the deputy mayor, I'm only concerned about the Villages and Hamlets part of the motion was more than the Villages and Hamlets. It had to do with all committees and other things.
So you're asking that
He's asking me to divide the motion is what he's asking.
oh, so to dissolve the village and hamlets and have the special committee of council?
Say it again, please.
Okay, give me 1 second here. One moment here, folks. Sorry. Okay, so I will read the updated first motion. So first motion will read that administration report number 822-033 dated December 14th, 2022 regarding updates to various committee terms of references be approved, and that the updated committee terms of references as attached to report 822-033 be approved with the exception that the Villages and Hamlets Committee be dealt with by separate resolution. And further, that a bylaw be brought forward with the required amendments to the council procedural bylaw. And further, that a bylaw be brought forward to repeal bylaw 2010-43 regulating the committee of adjustment. And further, that staff proceed with advertising for members for the various committees.
We have a mover for that motion. Moved by Member Cox, second by Member Brennan. All in favor? That's carried.
Okay, and then the second motion would be that the current Villages and Hamlets Committee be dissolved and that the associated budget be set aside for special projects that are to be brought forward directly to council on a case-by-case basis, and further that staff report back with an amendment to the grants policy.
Okay, we got a mover for that motion. Moved by Member Brennan, second by Member Cox, and I believe it's a recorded vote.
Okay, thank you.
No, Allison will ask your names when it comes out.
Yeah, bear with me. Okay, so Councillor McIntyre, for or against? Okay. Councillor Mennings, for or against? Okay. Councillor Jansen, for or against? For. If you don't have your cards, if you could unmute yourself at least, that would be great. Yeah.
For.
For, okay. Councillor Brennan, for or against?
For.
Okay. Member Cox?
For.
Thank you. Member Burkett?
For.
Member Taylor?
No.
Okay. Motion is carried 5-2.
Okay, we'll move on to F 2.2, land sale on Ellis Road Allison, if you could speak to this, please.
Yes, give me 1 second just to change gears here. Okay, so staff received this inquiry quite a number of months ago. Unfortunately, due to the lame duck provisions under the municipal act during the election period, staff were unable to bring this forward at that point in time. So here it is before you today. So essentially, this is a odd piece of land that is being assessed towards the property, but they don't actually own it. So they have put in an inquiry to purchase the piece, which is detailed on the map included in the staff report. Staff have no concerns with respect to this. So if council approves the inquiry, the next steps will be to get the land surveyed, and then a appraisal will be done on the property to determine land value, and then staff will report back. So.
Allison, I have a question. So this doesn't affect the road at all, like the road allowance. And does it affect, do the adjoining properties have township property too? Because when I went on Simcoe County maps, it showed the whole property as being one piece, but in fact, the area you've got shaded off here is township. So I'm just curious, what else is there as well?
Yeah, so it seems like when we looked into the title history around the neighboring abutting properties, that many years ago, the other adjoining properties dealt with the portion that was township that has been attached to their property, and this one got missed. So there's a bit of a, depending on which layer of mapping you look at between land titles and assessment mapping, you'll get a bit of a different story. But this seems like an odd duck one that kind of got gapped on between the other properties. There's no impact to the township road, and Public Works is completely unconcerned.
Great, thank you. Member Burkett, you have a question there.
Thank you through the chair to Allison. You may not have an answer, Allison, but looking at the map, the red section that is ours, I don't know if that's to the north, but there's a vacant piece. Is that owned by a private individual, or is that ours as well? Right along Ellis Road there.
You mean where, I'm going to say where it fattens out, just to the north there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's ours.
So so we're going to sell this one, and we own the other ones as well. So are these landowners going to come looking to buy that as well? Because it's ours.
No, I don't think so. I've spoken to on totally different topics. I've talked to a few of those abutting owners. The driveway network through that neck of the woods is a bit peculiar. So they'd have to, bunch of them are going off like one road, and then it splinters off to the lakefront property. So it'd be a bit of a different one to deal with. Whereas this is just, if you were to drive by it, it looks like their property goes right up to the road. And there's a single driveway coming right off Ellis.
So supplementary through the chair, if I may.
Yeah.
So in the red section that we're looking to sell, so are they using our lands to get to Ellis Road? And the other ones that you're saying that there's only one way in to those 4 property owners. So are they going across our property as well to get to the 4 cottages that they have there? And you may not have that answer for me now.
So with respect to the current property, and the folks that are coming forward now are not the original owners. So I'm going to put that out there. So the driveway has always come across that piece. So they're looking to essentially purchase the piece that they've been assessed for quite a long time, because they've been using it as their access point into the driveway. With respect to the group that's coming off the larger piece north, I'd have to look into that a bit more. I think I could get back to you. But staff, like I said, we're unconcerned with respect to this localized piece, because it seems to be the odd duck around its surrounding properties.
Supplementary through the chair, if I may. So when they go across our piece of property, we don't need to enter into an agreement and get insurance, do we? Is this something that we would have to look at for these other 4 or no? And I don't need an answer today because you're going to look into it. Maybe
I will look into it,
okay.
Member Burkett, and let you know.
All right.
Yeah, just I'll speak here, but I think it's a good thing. We have a procedure to sell township property, so we're going to get it appraised all at the expense of the purchaser, and then we don't necessarily have to take that number either. So I think it's a good thing, and get it off if we don't need it. And further to what Member Burkett's saying, it's one less liability on our ticket there. So I think, yeah, I'm all in favor of this. Move forward.
Okay.
If we have a motion there, Allison, when you get a minute.
Yes. Thank you. So the motion reads that administration report number 822-034 dated December 14th, 2022 regarding land sale inquiry 1851 Ellis Road be received, and that the land sale inquiry be approved, and for the staff report back once the required survey and appraisal work has been completed.
Okay, we have a mover for that motion, please. Moved by member Hanson, seconded by member McIntyre. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're staying in the clerk's department. We'll go to F2.3.
Sorry. I have a few reports today. Okay, so the next one is really about what meeting format and schedule you want to adopt. The schedule is more of a side piece. So every year I tend to bring forward the council schedule for the next year, that it follows the schedule set out in the council procedural bylaw. So that is attached to the staff report. But the primary piece of this report is to talk about whether or not council remains virtual or chooses to hold some meetings hybrid, or how you'd like to do that. I've heard over the last couple of years concerns about staff driving and inclement weather and such like that. I do want to make sure that committee is aware that we do have a piece in the existing procedural bylaw that would allow us to flip a meeting that is scheduled to be in chambers to being virtual with 24 hours notice if we knew of inclement weather coming. So we already have that provision in effect. As of right now, staff, just as a base point starting point, might recommend or recommending that just a handful of meetings be done in a hybrid format: budget, committee of adjustment, and the planning and development committee. The reason why the planning and development and committee of adjustment were selected is because they're the ones that have the public input. So this would not stop by any means. We want to make sure that's clear. The public for participating virtually, they would still show up on the screen in chambers and be able to submit their comments on any application that council or the committee of adjustment are reviewing. But this would allow folks to attend in person and council to see them in person. Should council not wish to be a hybrid structure, and by hybrid, I mean council is required to be in chambers. Council, all of council members, in order to be counted as in attendance, would have to be sitting in their seats in council chambers. We do not permit the mix. We've tested it. It did not work well. And in some places it's caused problems because what happens is that the chair gets focused on the screen and it gets very difficult for even just something as simple as taking a vote to make sure that you're checking down the whole of the dais and up on the screen, let alone trying to manage who's got their hands up wanting to speak between a council dais during discussion and the screen if you've got one member that's online. So our current council procedural bylaw requires that if we do a hybrid meeting, that the members be in physical attendance. All of that said, if council wants to remain hybrid, and we do have a member of the public who doesn't have a computer or isn't comfortable with technology and wants to be in attendance and still make comment, we would set them up with a computer in chambers. We've had that process in place for a couple of years now. So if someone actually asks, we could be able to do that. And they've had to do that a couple of times at committee of adjustment. So there's a bunch of different ways we can go, and I'm just seeking some direction.
Okay, I think you'll get some feedback here. Member Burkett has his sign up. We'll let him go with him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm quite happy the way we have it today. I think it works out really well. I know there are some members that would like to be in chambers, and I have been in chambers before, but this is very special. Of all things that COVID has brought us, the ugly things, this is a good thing, I think. Just my comments.
Thank you, Member Burkett. Member Cox.
Through the chair, I like virtual meetings too, and I don't agree that the hybrid wouldn't work. It wouldn't work the way we did it. County Council did it just like all the members were in the same room with Zoom. And as long as you keep your mute on, you could do it that way. You could have 3 members in if well, here we are today. But I do believe that I would like to see maybe one a month or something like that. And I have to say that I thought that the planning meetings were one of the meetings that we had more representation and more people actually commenting on our planning meetings, like our OP and the short-term rentals and all those other ones, compared to real life that I've seen in years. And I just thought that it was more convenient. You have a person who lives in Toronto and wants to be at a planning meeting and make comments, and he can do it, or he or she can do it during the day and take 15 minutes off work to put forward their idea. I mean, we did that short-term rental meeting that one night, and we had a storm come in, and it didn't end until like almost 11 o'clock, and we had people driving back to Toronto and Hamilton in storms. So, and I realized we do have the storm thing in there, but once your meeting starts and something comes up, these people may not even want to try to attend. So I'm fine with virtual, but I'm also fine maybe, you know, like at corporate services if we want or whatever. And I'm definitely fine with day meetings. I think that that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the clerk had her sign up. Good. And then our CAO.
The one thing, if I can just through to committee, the one thing I do want to make sure is very clear is that even if council were to choose to go hybrid for any of their meetings, and it is something like a planning public meeting or a topic specific special meeting that we're taking public input at, if council chooses to go hybrid, we are 100% still going to provide that virtual option for people to participate. So I just want to make sure that that is explicitly understood. So delegations will still be able to attend virtually, and all public participation will still be able to happen virtually. It's just opening that up to that in-person piece again. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you. I think Lori, you had your sign up.
Yeah, thank you, the chair. I was just going to clarify what the clerk already did, so I'm good.
Okay, I think what I'm going to do is just go through the different wards. I'll start with Ward 1. I like the virtual myself, and I think of one committee that does need to be in person is the Committee of Adjustment, because that's where individuals come in and explain their situations. But yeah, I like the Zoom. It's flexible. We've got a member today that's tested positive for COVID. He's assured me it can't be transferred over the internet, and he wouldn't be at a real meeting if it wasn't for this virtual. So I like the way it is. So I'll hand over to Ward 2 there to see what Member Jansen would like to say. And you're on mute there, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. I've, as well as the other members of council and staff, grown accustomed to meeting virtually, holding all sorts of different types of meetings online. I am supportive of holding meetings online. I do wonder if there is value to holding a couple of meetings together in council, though I do believe there is something to be gained to coming together, whether that's all the councillors and staff, and the interaction that you get prior to the meeting and after the meeting. If there's an appetite to schedule 1 or 2 meetings per year, that the members of the public would know that we would be in the council chambers. I'm just putting that out there.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to Ward 3 there. Member Brennan.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I fully support Member Jansen's comments. The idea that our working councillors and mayor can get to meetings in addition to the other tons of responsibilities they have, I think it really helps them, and that just makes us stronger. I do like the idea of the odd meeting to justify our council chambers, and it is kind of a cool place to sit every now and then. And to me, for sure, you know, the travel months of January and February they're ideal for virtual meetings. November and December, and I can attest to this, are flu months, and they're good months not to get too close. And I've seen how effective even the summer virtual meetings were when Member Taylor was on the road last year, and he was far away, and I'm sure had other fun things to do, but here he was sitting in on council meetings in the middle of the summer. So there's some definite efficiencies, and virtual has got its strengths, no doubt.
Thank you. And we'll go switch over to Ward 4, Member Minnings.
Thank you. I'm all for Zoom meetings, virtual. I would agree that coming together perhaps in January for budget meetings are important, and perhaps in late spring or June, and then back in the fall, September, October, and in person, but to stay off the roads and when the driving is dark. The other thing is, as was mentioned, we are still in a pandemic. We were all together last week for our inaugural. I'm surprised that one of us has tested positive, and that does bring concerns into our homes. For various reasons. So I think that that I would like this too. The other thing, I'm not sure if this is part of the discussion, although it was in the package, is around the actual schedule of, whether it's the first Thursdays, third or fourth. So Chair Taylor, I would like to know if I should have a comment on that now, or if we're going to discuss that, the frequency.
Yeah, let's go through the virtual, and then we'll come back for the actual. Is that okay with you, Allison, to set up? Okay, thanks. But so you would like the Zoom meetings to continue as best, with maybe the budget on the 26th and 27th of January to be in person. Is that sort of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And one or two one in the spring and one in the fall in person.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go to member from Ward 5, Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to make it 4 for 4. I agree the Zoom is the way to go at this moment, with the world filled with flu and COVID, Mr. Phil, and others. So I would like to keep it the way it is. And from time to time, with lots of notice, having in chambers meeting with the public being informed beforehand, so that everybody gets a chance to come in here and see our smiling faces. But I'm all in favor of the Zoom process. In fact, that's pretty much all I've ever seen and ever known. So I can't vote against it. It's fine for me.
Okay. So Allison, are you okay with that? How does that?
Yeah, so what I might propose then, because we've got our different classifications of committees. So we've got like standing committees, and we've got advisory committees, and we've got what we call quasi-judicial, which is committee of adjustment, and actually our property standards committee. So then what I might do is then I'm going to update the motion to read, and further, that the township maintain virtual meetings for the council term, with the exception that quasi-judicial committees be held in a hybrid fashion, as well as the occasional special meeting. So, and then council can make that decision on a case-by-case basis. So, but if you want to do budget in person come January, we need to know so we can issue notice because that's coming up quite quick. And then I would notice, would just want to note for member Mennings and member Jansen, just as a heads up, that in a normal year, we do budget in the fall. It's not normally in January. We just, the outgoing council could not approve the budget for the new council. They didn't have that authority anymore. So that's why budget is happening in January, but it normally happens in November.
Okay, I think member Cox, you have your speak sign
up. Through the chair to the CAO, should we do our strategic planning in person, or how would that work or not? Like, what do you think?
Thank you. Through the chair, we are definitely doing a strategic planning day in person.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think important special days like that, budget, strategic planning, I think those are important to gather. I think day-to-day business is quite done fine.
Okay, thank you.
So you're going to say that, so January 19th and then the 26th and 27th will be in person then?
Yes, but just remember that the January 19th meeting is at the Coldwater Community Center, so we will not be streaming that one, and it will be a closed session of council.
Okay.
Under the education training piece. So just as a heads up to council.
Okay.
So I think we've covered the virtual versus in person. I think Wanda had a question about scheduling, I think.
Yes.
Go ahead, Wanda.
Sorry, just finding my mute button. My question is around the current schedule that we're meeting on the first, third, and fourth Wednesdays of each month. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And Okay. And my question was if any of those could be bundled into one day. Again, I'm thinking of just logistics, or if that's something that has been considered in the past. So one morning meeting, one afternoon meeting, like we're doing today, for example.
I think I'll let the clerk speak and then the CAO speak.
In general, so part of the reason why we do in particular normally planning on one day and corporate on another is that they can both be very long committee meetings. So typically we've had it where we have four I think has been our high point in the last year, where we've had 4 planning public meetings in one planning and development committee. And then on top of that, we've had 2 delegations, and then you can have staff reports as well. And then to go from there straight into a normal corporate services, it's an exceptionally long day. And it's part of the reason why traditionally, if you had evening meetings, they didn't let you go past 11 o'clock, is because at a certain point, your brain gets exhausted. And how much do you actually have the ability to think through the delegations that are then coming to corporate services if they're in the afternoon? So Tuesdays, just for the rest of committee's knowledge, is typically avoided because it tends to be when the county does stuff. So typical county council and committees are done on Tuesdays. If they have special meetings, they try to do them on the Tuesdays because the rest of the municipalities in the county tend to avoid doing it that day for that very reason. Yeah, I didn't know if the CAO had anything else she wanted to say.
Thank you. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you. Through the chair, it would be difficult to combine them. And I think the challenge is the agendas you're seeing right now are quite light, but as we go into the year, they get quite a bit heavier. And particularly our Director of Public Works is on a long holiday right now, but when he's back, he quite often has 4 to 6 reports every month. And then planning can be quite long as well. That's why we separate them. It becomes a challenge because some meetings will be short, and we don't unfortunately know until we get to prepping what's on the agenda, whether it's going to be a long meeting or a short meeting. And I do ask from time to time if we can condense them, and the clerk always reminds me that we've given notice from this meeting of what our schedule looks like. So she doesn't let me combine them when they're short.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense.
Thank you. So have we pretty much captured?
I think so. I could read the motion out for committee if you want. And then if there's any last changes, then committee can make those.
Yeah, one other thought I had, just back to the Zoom meetings, that we're able to get people that are working on council and having the flexibility with Zoom, we get a better blend on council. So I think it's a win-win all around, but that's just my point there. I'll let Allison read the motion.
Okay. So the motion reads that administration report number 822-035 dated December 14th regarding the 2023 meeting format and schedule be received, and that the 2023 meeting schedule be confirmed. And further, that the township maintain virtual meetings for the council term with the exception that quasi-judicial committees be held in a hybrid fashion, as well as the occasional special meeting, and that the necessary amendments to the council procedural bylaw be brought forward to the next council meeting.
Do we have a mover for that, please? Moved by member Minnings, second by member Jansen. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we go to 2.4, back to Alice again, updated Coldwater and District Agricultural Society Agreement.
Thank you. Thank you. This is my last one, I promise. So long time coming. The recreation manager and I have been working on this for 2 years. It takes time with the fair board to get stuff back and forth because their meetings don't necessarily line up with our meetings, and just time passes. So new agreement before you with the fair board, simplified substantially from what it used to be. We do think that it's a positive step forward. It very clearly identifies what structures are ours, what structures are theirs. They have chosen, and I do want to say that very clearly, they have chosen to obtain their own separate insurance policy going forward with respect to their structures. So they are no longer covered under the township's policies or are, oh my gosh, it's the amount you pay when you have a claim. Deductible. They're completely their own policy at this point and going forward, which is a substantive change. They are still required to name us as third-party insured for the standing 5 million, so that when they do hold events such as the fall fair, we are still covered for whenever they use our grounds. With that, I guess if there's any questions.
I saw that Deputy Mayor, did you want to speak? Member Cox, or you're okay? Okay. So I think we got a motion then. That's a big change, and they're going to their own insurance company versus. Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead, Member Cox.
No, I think this is really, oops, no, I think this is really good because there was a lot of confusion with a lot of wordy things in it, and nobody knew who was supposed to, and this is better. This is good. Thank you.
Okay. I think Andrew can shed some light as well. Andrew?
I can just through the chair. One of the issues for them was our deductible for property damage has increased from 10,000 to 25,000, and 25,000 was out of their realm of wanting to come up with the money if something did happen. So they chose to go with their own insurance because it's easier for them to raise the money for insurance annually than it would be to raise 25,000 all at once.
Okay, great. If we got a motion, Allison.
Sure. Motion reads that administration report number A22-038 dated December 14th, 2022 regarding an updated Coldwater and District Agricultural Society agreement be received, and that the new agreement for the use of 11 Michael Land Drive between the Township 7 and the Coldwater and District Agricultural Society be approved, and further that the required bylaw be brought forward to the next meeting of council.
Okay, we got a mover for that motion. Moved by Member Minning, second by Member Jansen. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we go to F 2.5, CAO regarding updated flexible work policies. Over to you, Laurie.
Thank you. Through the chair, finally somebody other than the clerk. She was busy catching up after the election, but I think we're in good stead going forward. We brought this flexible work policy to council 2 years ago. COVID changed how municipalities worked. It changed how everyone worked. And what we're trying to do here is just keep our policies up to date and as consistent with some of our peers as we can. I noted in my report, the leader on this is Springwater, and they are offering a 4-day work week. We discussed that at great length at our management team, and we just don't think we have the staff to do that for coverage. So we're offering a slightly reduced compressed work week. And so we had been offering a compressed work week just in the winter. We think we can manage that throughout the whole year. We don't think we can manage 4 days a week. We looked at a compressed work week that gave you a day off every 2 weeks. And even that is a bit aggressive for us just because we have such a small complement of work. So we're suggesting just extending our compressed work week from seasonal to the entire year. We clarified the language around allowable remote work. So right now we already have staff that work 1 or 2 days per week, but we had the language was fairly vague in our policies. So just to make it easier for the directors to manage, we've clarified exactly who can work what days or how many days. And we clarified the language around director responsibility. So it's really important to us that we have great coverage at the front. And so we just wanted to make it clear that the directors are responsible for that. And the last clarification was this is really an administrative policy that doesn't necessarily belong at the council table. The reason we brought it 2 years ago, because it was such a huge change in how we worked that we wanted council to be up to date on it. So because I didn't ask at the time that I could approve future policies, we're bringing that forward this time to say we don't expect major policy changes going forward, but we will tweak it from time to time just to make sure that we're competitive with our neighbors. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions there? Member McIntyre.
Through the chair to Madam CAO, how many hours are there in a compressed work week, Laurie?
Staff would work 7.5 hours a day to accumulate that extra half an hour to 1 day off every 3rd week.
Okay, thanks.
So they'd work 15 days in 14, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let Member Cox speak and then Member Jansen, and then I'd like to speak. Member Cox, go ahead.
Through the chair to the CAO, just a couple of questions. When it says in the technical support supplied by the employer, are you talking about computers and that's it?
Yes, we supply the laptops, which we did during COVID. Everybody
yeah, well, I assumed that, but
laptop,
yeah.
And depending on their job, we might provide a monitor at home.
But yeah, no, that's fine.
Some of the planning need bigger screens.
No, I just didn't know if we were going to supplement internet costs.
We do not, no.
Okay, that's fine. And the days they're home and we want to call into a director, do they check their messages so they can get back to us?
They absolutely do.
Okay. And I had another one, but now it's gone out of my head. Oh, and the 1 day a week are okay with the 2 day a weeks? Because we have some staff that are only 1 day and the other staff that are 2. I just want to make sure that that wasn't an issue between staff.
It may be, but there are some jobs that just don't lend themselves to working from home.
Yeah, I know.
If I look at what our neighbors do, lots of places don't actually allow their customer service staff any days at home.
Okay.
So we're trying to at least get them one, but it doesn't make sense if you're on the counter or on the phones, then you can't do that from home.
Well, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with everything. Happy staff. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Member Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, reading over the policy, I think it looks great. I'm wondering about the compressed work week option and the flexible work arrangement options. Is this has this been well received by staff? And I'm just wondering if they're asking for further compression, or if this is something that they're happy to be moving forward on, or you know, how it's been received. I guess that's the general question.
Through the chair, I think it's been very well received. Are they asking for more? 50-50. So we did a survey and 50% of employees would like the 4 day long days, but 50% thought that was too much. As if you have kids in daycare or you got after school activities or whatever, working those long days wasn't right for everybody. So we're starting slow, and we'll build up on those policies as we see it working and as our staff complement grows. But we've done what we think we can manage and still provide good coverage at the front.
I just had a question, Lori. With technology, if someone were working at home, and is it possible if you call their work number, it could be forwarded to a number that they can answer live rather than relying on voicemail and adding more processes to it?
Oh, I see Andrew wants to answer that.
I can jump in on that one. I can just to answer the chair. Our current phone system, I think, can be forwarded somewhat, but we are working on getting a new system that would, if they call the township office and somebody types in that extension, it will come directly to the new phone that we'll all have, because it'll be voice over internet protocol, which is what it's called. So we will be able to answer all the phones directly, as if whether we're at home or at the office. We just don't have the system in play yet.
I just think this, with the current system having to leave voicemail, that's going to add another day or two to it. That's just my opinion. Member Meetings and Member Cox.
Sorry, if I just can clarify, staff are supposed to be checking their messages several times a day. And while we do have the capacity to forward, we don't require it because not all staff have corporate phone plans either. So you would be forwarding it to their personal phone. So it's a little bit tricky, but Andrew is working on a solution that will allow everyone to do that without cost.
Okay, good. Thank you. Wanda speak, and then Member Cox.
Just a comment. I just wanted to say how pleased I was to read this policy. I'm very familiar with the compressed work week and dynamic work, so where people are also allowed to work from home, depending on their role, a certain number of days a week. And I think that's really forward thinking and very attractive as an employer of choice here in Severn. So I just wanted to say thank you promoting this and getting it also solid, because it is a choice. Not everyone has to do this. Yeah, but for those who would like to do it, I'm sure it's been well received.
Okay, thank you. Member Cox.
Yeah, through the chair to CAO. Lori, if they are on regular days home, like, how do I know that they're just not off, like on a real day off, and I don't want to bother them? Like, I don't want to start sending emails and somebody's off sick.
Yeah. So staff should be using their out of office, both in their voicemail and their email. So if they're not working, you should get a bounce back to say, you know, I'm on vacation today, I'll be back next week. Or if they're out of the office, they should have something similar on their office voicemail.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't, okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, I'll ask Allison to read the motion.
Certainly. So the motion reads that the flexible work arrangement policy, human resources policy number 78 be approved as amended, and further that any future updating required to the policy be approved by the chief administrative officer.
Okay, we have a mover for that, please. Moved by member Brennan, seconded by member Jansen. All in favor? And that is carried. And we'll go to new business, D 2.1. And I think what they're looking for there, Allison, is that the township would waive any costs associated with ice rental and road closure.
Yeah, so
and New Year's Eve as well, I see here.
Yeah, so, and I apologize for delaying it coming forward. It's just, again, with the lame duck provisions, the outgoing council didn't have the authority to approve funds on behalf of the new council, so that's the delay. The Lions Club is aware that it's being considered today too. So they were aware that for the events that have already happened, that there would be a delay on that. So,
and just for the rest of the new committee members, this is a standard thing. It's a good thing that happens. We do this in Coldwater and other areas of the township as well. So I would certainly support it. Any comments from the committee? Member Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm, in the letter that's been sent by the Lions Club, if we are approving this, we're approving everything that's been sent, every request that's been sent in the letter.
I'll let Allison answer that.
Thank you.
Yes, so it would be all the requests that are stipulated in there. I did make them aware though that there's one aspect in there, and I don't have the letter right in front of me, that is more of an annual grant submission, and they have actually submitted two sides of the same organization. One didn't know that the grant had been submitted for. So the part that's actually asking for funds, just give me 1 second here. 1 second just to pull up the letter here.
Yeah, the fifth paragraph asked for that we'd consider them at the budget time in January. So that's we're not committed.
So that one has been someone else in the Alliance had submitted a formal grant application, so that piece has been referred over to budget. But the rest of it dealing with the permit fees, ice rental costs is more what we're talking about at this point. Defray the cost of the fireworks as part of the annual. They do submit a formal budget request for that grant. So that will come forward as part of budget in January. But yeah, we're talking in particular about the permit and the ice fees and stuff like that at this point.
Okay, any other comments for the committee? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
Okay, so the motion reads that the request by the Coldwater Lions Club that council waive the fees for the annual candlelight and Santa Claus parade, waive the associated fees, and New Year's Eve festivities be approved.
Okay, we have a mover for that motion. Moved by member Jansen, seconded by member McIntyre. All in favor? And that is carried.
Perfect.
Great, thank you. So moving along the agenda, we'll go to committee updates. I know some of us aren't on any, there are new people that are just on the committees, but I'm going to ask the mayor, deputy mayor, and then wards 1 to 5, just a comment on what you've done so far. So we'll just go to the mayor. If there's any updates from county or committees, that would be great.
Through the chair, to committee. I attended the National Day of Remembrance at headquarters this past Tuesday. It was well attended, and if you can believe this, 2 88-year-old ladies were abused and killed. I can't fathom that. And an 8-year-old child, which is beyond belief. Anyways, it was well attended. I also attended Lake Country, and then the Zoom meeting for some reason ended. I'm not sure why, but they are struggling with Remera, and they may not give their 20,000 towards Lake Country, which was interesting. Also, I think that was it.
Member Cox has a comment on that, and then we'll go to Member Cox.
We chase them every year. Like everybody else would give the money, and like May, they'd say, "Oh, here," and give us the money.
Okay, thank you. I think the mayor is done. We'll go to the deputy mayor. If you could, any committee updates from your end of it.
Okay. I attended a library board meeting. I think I was a visitor. So that was fine. And I got some information to look at. BIA, we have a lot of new members. Member Councillor Jansen's on the committee now. Actually, everybody's a new member, but me. Oh, and Mark Misson is still there. He was new before. So it's really good. And we picked, and the chairs of the committees, it's wonderful. Every chair is a business owner, which is really good. And the events committee that I was chair of is now 10 people strong. And we're going to merge some of the committees together. And the woman who took over, Georgiana Gilchrist, she took over the marketing and advertising, and that's what she does in the real world, is marketing and advertising. And then we have a young girl who's interested in doing our social media, which is excellent. She wants to be a part of that committee, and she's so that will be very good for us. County, we had the inaugural yesterday, and I'm the chair of performance management. So that was kind of nice.
I think Wanda had a question for you, Judith.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. Member Cox, so the BIA, are you talking about a Severn BIA, or is it a community?
It's Coldwater BIA.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because actually, Member Minnings, we did talk about a Severn BIA, but it's far too hard because a BIA has to be in an area. And so if you try to do a whole Severn one, I think it would be nightmarish. Sorry. And I do know that I was talking to a gentleman in Washago, the ice cream shop owner, and I think he's looking in his area to do a business association, because there's not enough businesses in the area to that would help support it. So I think, that's it. And I understand you and I had talked before about this. And I think that's something we may need to talk to staff about, because I do believe on our website, there is, I could be wrong, Allison, there is a section that talks about businesses in Severn Township, that if people go online, they could look it up, but I don't know that there's any on it. So Wanda and I had been talking that there's a lot of businesses out there that are Severn and local that probably, if there was any way we could help them and they could get on that website, because I think the county had something like that. So I don't know if we do, but if they would put their name in, it would be excellent if people wanted to look up businesses that they wanted to use in the local area.
Okay, thank you. If is that it for you there, Judith?
Well, yeah, I just wondered if Allison could correct me on that, or is there a thing on our website for business directory?
I will look into it and let council know if that works.
Okay.
I do want to just,
I don't know. There was now.
Yeah, so just as a heads up though, we do have a group coming. Our local community development corporation is going to come to committee to do a delegation in February. So that might be a good piece of information as well for our members.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to do Ward 1 and then we'll go right through all the wards. So it's with some sadness and happiness, I'd like to report that Gwen Robinson has retired from the mill. Gwen's put her heart and soul in the mill, and it's been a pleasure to have worked with her. Just to let you know that one of Gwen's highlights of 2022 was being named Senior Citizen of the Year by the Township of Severn. So she's been nothing but the best for the mill, and we had a great year this year, and it ended off with Santa ending up at the mill. So we wish Gwen nothing but the best going forward. And that's all from Ward 1. We'll go over to Ward 2. Mr. Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also attended the Coldwater BIA meeting with Member Cox. She did capture quite a lot of the items that happened there. I will mention as well that Mark Misson was elected the chair, or brought forward to become the chair. And he has organized an event tomorrow at the Legion to bring Coldwater groups together. Some of the boards like the Fair Board, the Canadian Museum Lions Club, and the Legion, in an effort to try to organize the year's events so that they're not stepping on each other's toes, and making sure that they've got each month covered. They do hope to have a calendar of events put out early in January or late January, early February at the latest. I will be joining the Seg Bay Chamber of Commerce. I did, thanks to the other members, meet some of the members of that Chamber of Commerce at the Santa Claus Parade in Port Severn. And there has been a lot of group communications going back and forth. They have a meeting set up for December the 20th. That will be coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll head over to Ward 3.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Yes, I attended the Aurelia Physician and Area Recruitment Committee last month. They're having an event tomorrow morning to thank the doctors in our community. Apparently, it's going to be well attended, and that's to be followed by another meeting of the committee, which I have already informed them that I will not be attending for obvious reasons. But they're really working hard, and it's an impressive committee. I think they're going to get some good results. I also attended the Otis Park year-end meeting this past month, and I can report they're planning a New Year's Eve dance for anyone who wants to go there, obviously on New Year's Eve, and their AGM is scheduled for January as well. That's it for now.
Thank you. Member Burkett, you had a question for Member Brennan?
Thank you, through the chair. Member Cox, I won't be able to go, and I'm just curious if you are available tomorrow to at least go, so that there's someone from Severn to the doctor.
What time was it at?
I don't know what time it is, Member Brennan.
Yeah, Member Cox, I can send you the information. It's early, like it's a morning breakfast. I think it starts around 7 a.m. to 9. It's basically handing out breakfasts to the doctors. So, you know,
just send me the information.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Member Cox.
Oh, it's okay. I have a dentist appointment. I have to just check what time it's at.
Okay, I'll send you the information right after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Brennan. We'll pass it over to Ward 4, Member Minnings.
Hi, thank you. And I have not attended any meetings in the last week, although I will let you know that Ward 4 is hosting its second annual Christmas parade. So Santa Claus will be there. It's this Sunday, December the 18th at 1 p.m.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll go to Ward 5. Jim, number 5, please. And you're on mute there, Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Haven't attended any meetings, but we did attend the Santa Claus Parade. It was tremendous turnout. The councillors who were unable to attend, I'm sure you've seen lots of the activity on Facebook. The committee, along with Judith Cox, of course, and Pat Harwood was quasi the chair of this committee. She did a tremendous job. We had, I believe it was 17 floats. We took probably 40 minutes for it to pass by one spot from the beginning. Tremendous event and very good turnout. Secondly, West Canal Road is having a food drive on Saturday the 17th. Along Canal Road and turns around at the lock and goes back to where they started, West Canal Road. It's a food drive and starts at 1 o'clock. If anybody wants to either contribute or attend it, I unfortunately cannot. I have a commitment in the city of Toronto. So that's all I have for now.
Great. Thanks for the updates. And we'll move to any CEO updates from Lori.
Thank you. I think staff have been so busy getting council to this point that I don't have anything to update you on today, but I did want to circle back to a question that member Cox asked about business listings. So we don't list businesses on our website, and I would suggest we probably wouldn't, because if one, you don't want to promote one over the other, you don't want to miss any, but we do have a nice page on business resources. So it links you to the Segbay Chamber, to the Aurelia Chamber, to the BIA. And businesses would join those organizations and get listed there, and that would be a better place for it, I think. So we give them the tools to find the resources, but we don't provide them ourselves.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask Allison for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Sure. Motion just is that this meeting be and is hereby now adjourned at 2:40 p.m.
Do we have a mover for that, please? Moved by member Minnings, seconded by member Jansen. All in favor? That one's carried. Thanks for a good meeting.